everyone will need to okay that, just so everyone is aware. And Becky, whenever you're ready, meeting.
Okay, great. Thanks everybody for joining us today for this info session. We had a similar session last year that was a great success, and our goal really is to just kind of update residents on some of the salient and poignant issues that are happening around water resources during the summer, and provide some background information, some information about future planning, and to really focus on Q&A and hear what kind of questions residents have for us. So we put together a panel of people to help answer those questions and provide that information. Myself, Becky Malamut, I'm the chair of the Water Resources Commission. We have Sam Woods, who is the executive director of the North and South Rivers Watershed Association. Next to her, we have Sarah Grady, who works for the Mass Bays as well as for the North and South Rivers Watershed Association. We have Kyle Boyd, who is the town's director of planning and development. Bob Vogel, who is the building commissioner and zoning enforcement officer. And then we have Sean Anderson, who is our water superintendent. So I'm just going to start right off. I'm going to just give an update on kind of where we are in terms of demand and the status of the water ban as well. So as of August 16th, both the reservoir and Tack Factory Pond were at +3 inches, which means they're full. Not as full as they were a week ago, but still much fuller than they were this time last year. Our average daily demand for the last 7 days was 1.5 million gallons per day, which is lower than usual, not significantly, but it is about 300,000 gallons per day less than it was last year. And it is up a little bit slightly from last week. So as of June 5th, we've been on what we're now referring to as our Tier 1 seasonal outdoor water ban, which is quite a difference from last year. I don't know who remembers last year, but we were in a total water ban from June. And so now we've been in just a seasonal ban since we had those well issues back at the end of May. We still do need to be mindful of our water use in order to protect our current infrastructure, which we're going to talk a bit more about. But it really is great to see how, between all the rain that we've had and I think the conservation measures that people have taken this year, to see that the water use is in a good, sustainable place. So I'm going to pass this over on to Sarah Grady, who's going to talk a little bit more of the science of the reservoir levels and some projections for the rest of the summer.
Okay, thank you. So yes, I'm the ecologist at the North and South Rivers Watershed, and I'm also the South Shore Regional Coordinator for the Massachusetts Bays National Estuary Partnership. And my role with working with the town is that I have developed an Excel model, just a pretty basic in and out kind of model that will take pieces of information that the town has, like the reservoir level and what their surface water pumping rate is, and try to project out when the reservoir would hit the prescribed levels where the town would go into the total water ban, or the stream flow releases that the town does for First Time Brook would be cut off in favor of keeping water in place for the town. So I just have 2 quick-ish slides to show. So let's see. Okay. So this shows the reservoir levels throughout the spring and then through the summer over the past 3 years. So this year is the sort of turquoise with the squares. Last year is this darker blue with the triangles. And then 2019 is the lightest blue dashed line with the circles. When the reservoir level reaches -48 inches, so 4 feet below the spillway, that is when the town would go into a water ban. So that is when the reservoir is just under half full. And then when it reaches 96 inches below the spillway, which is 8 feet below the spillway, that is when stream flow would be cut off, that's when the reservoir is 20% full. And as you can see, this line down here, this is reservoir failure. So that's emptying the reservoir down to the low level outlet. So you can see that, this year, the reservoir was spilling the entire summer, at least the information that I got pretty much each week from the town. And in 2019, it was spilling up until just about now, just about mid-August, and then it started to go down, but it did not reach that water ban level. Last year, as you recall, was a tougher year. The reservoir was already below the spillway in June, and then the town chose to go into a water ban and cut off stream flow at about 16 inches below the spillway on June 27th, which was above both of those trigger points. So what I do each week with the town is put the information that I mentioned into this Excel spreadsheet, and that will kind of tell me when the reservoir would hit those particular levels for each year. So in this case, this is the most recent data that I received. This is a straight screenshot from the spreadsheet. So right now it's down negative inches. So that means it's spilling. So that's about 1.8 inches over the spillway. The reservoir is 102.3% full. And this 7-day pumping average is an average of the surface water pumping only. So you heard Becky mention the total water demand. This is just the surface water demand. So this is what would be directly affecting the reservoir. And so this is the average over the past week, about 747,000 gallons. And then this is a projected pumping that is based on the surface water demand from last year. So previously I've used an average of multiple years, but for this year, when I was working on this, I was asked to use the potentially higher COVID demand. So that is what is in the model. And then for precipitation, that's for a dry year. So it's the lowest 20th percentile of years. So it would be a dry year, assuming we're not getting a lot of rain. Stream flow is just how much water is coming into the First Herring Brook, into the reservoir. And then when the town hits a water ban, I'm able to put in an assumption that the town will start saving about 6% more water than they were before, which is typically what we've seen on the low end for how well the town is able to conserve water. So at this point, with so much water in the reservoir, the town would not go into a water ban until the beginning of December, at which point the reservoir usually starts to fill up around mid-October. So the short story there is that we don't anticipate a water ban or a stream flow cutoff at any point this year. And hopefully this will help carry us into the next year with a surplus as well.
Great, thank you, Sarah. And just to clarify, when you say water ban, you mean a total outdoor water ban, correct? Like the strictest here.
Yeah, the total outdoor water ban, yes.
Great. So, all of that is kind of pending our infrastructure, right? Pending the health of our wells and of our surface water supply and our water treatment plant. And so that's what Sean Anderson is going to talk about next, kind of where we are with strengthening all of those systems to increase our supply and help provide safeguards to kind of bolster the system that we currently have. So Sean, take it away.
Yep. All right, I'm just going to give an update on a few projects here. Well, 17A update, excuse me. The green sand filter treatment plant is nearing completion. We are waiting for the power company to install the electric meter to begin testing all the equipment there. We will then begin preparing for an inspection from the DEP. We hope to have this new plant online in September. It will bring up to 350,000 gallons of clean drinking water per day into the water system. This will help reduce the burden on the surface water treatment plant.
Okay, give me 1 second, Sean, and I will pull up the, I'm not people, give me 1 second. View slideshow, here we go. So just a couple of images here of, well, 17A, this is the exterior. You know, I'll kind of have Sean talk about the specifics of it, but there was a tour that was held earlier this summer for the Water Resources Commission and members of the Select Board. And it's a really impressive building and system. It's state of the art, which is a wonderful thing to see in our town for one of our municipal buildings. So Sean, I don't know if you want to talk about any specifics about any of these pictures or.
Sure. That last one was the chemical feed section. You can see a lot of piping in there. To our operators, that's a great thing. You can see 2 pumps as redundancy on all the chemicals. So if one pump fails, you can switch over to another pump right on the fly and, you know, not skip a beat. And then the other picture, that's kind of a general picture of the whole layout. You kind of in the background see 3 filter vessels. Those filter vessels contain media that will filter out manganese, iron and manganese that's naturally occurring in the well water. They'll contain it. And then as they start to get clogged up, they'll automatically backwash, and that backwash water goes to a holding tank that then gets discharged to sewer. And in the foreground there is different colored pipes. That's just so that you know what's the drinking water pipes, what's the raw water pipes, and what's the backwash pipes. And then this is just a picture of the laboratory. It's still they're still doing a little bit of work in there. That's where we'll do our water testing to make sure we're getting full removal of the iron and manganese. We'll also test at different levels in the filter to see how far the chemicals are going into the filters. So it's really come a long ways.
Great. Okay.
And then this is 18B. This is a second project I was going to talk about. A residuals disposal system for the existing treatment is nearing completion. The system will pump the backwash water from the treatment vessels to a settling tank at the Widows Walk Golf Club. The clean water from this tank will then discharge into a pond to be reused for future irrigation at the golf course. This well will bring up to 200,000 gallons of water per day into the water system, again, helping to reduce the burden on the surface water treatment plant, especially in peak times during the summer. And I think there's a picture of the vessels. Those are the actual vessels that contain the media.
Okay.
And then the second picture is the settling tank.
Great.
Yep. And then this is a picture, if you've gone by our office recently, you've probably seen it behind our office. This is for the new surface water treatment plant that's in design currently. We are currently in the piloting stages for the design of the new surface water treatment plant. The pilot study will simulate several different treatment methods to find the optimal treatment method for our surface water. There is a focus on manganese removal, which our current treatment plant lacks. The study will be repeated in the winter to make sure the treatment works with both warm and cold water temperatures. That's a requirement by the DEP. A new surface water treatment plant will be a great benefit to the town. It will be able to produce a superior water quality with redundancy to ensure uninterrupted service. It will also allow us to be able to rest our groundwater wells in the winter or off season to give the aquifer time to recharge. And this is a very important factor for the longevity of our wells. So this is something that will help us, you know, long into the future.
And Sean, would you say that having all of these online will kind of allow to more predictability in the summer months in terms of stream flow cutoffs, water bans, that sort of thing?
Yes, absolutely. And then I have just one more final update, and that's on the Dolan well field off of Country Way. A pump test was performed on this site by Weston and Sampson, and a full report was submitted to DEP for review. We are currently waiting to hear back from the DEP. Once we hear back from them and we get a green light, we are going to proceed with construction. And when completed, this well could bring up to 400,000 gallons per day into our system. So as you can tell, it's quite a bit of water that we're, some of it very soon is going to be with us. The Dolan well is a few years off, I think, but the other ones should be hopefully in September coming online.
Great. Thank you, Sean.
Yep.
And then I'm going to send it over to Kyle Boyd to talk a little bit about future planning for the town.
Yeah, so thank you, Becky, for inviting me. I'm the Planning and Development Director for the town. Before I started as Planning and Development Director, I was the Coastal Management Officer for 2 years. And during that time, we worked on the Downtown Harbor Master Plan, Coastal Vision Plan, Peggotty Beach Managed Retreat Feasibility Study. So I'm just getting settled in as a Planning and Development Director. But some of the big initiatives that we're working on right now are to try to organize all the various planning efforts that have been going on. So I think most residents are aware of this because we hear a lot from the residents, but there's so many different plans that have been done over the past decade, and it can become really confusing to follow what the recommendations are. And obviously we just had our master plan finished. We had the Downtown Harbor Master Plan finished. So I was just talking about all these great planning efforts. But the big initiative that I've been working on is to try to take all those different plans and make them easier to read in an efficient time frame. So we're basically taking each of those plans. I've been working with Luis, who was the chair of the CAC, as well as John Clarkson, who is helping us as a volunteer. But we're taking all the plans that have been done over the past decade that are significant and coming up with a 2-page synopsis that will allow residents and staff to be able to easily digest what those plans are indicating and the essence of each of those plans, as well as the recommendations. And then what we're doing as a next step in that process is coming up with a matrix in regards to all the recommendations of those reports, so we can prioritize how we are going to move on all these different recommendations that have been made over the past 10 years. Instead of just doing more and more plans, we're trying to compile all the recommendations from those plans, and then we'll probably have a public engagement process to try to get input on the prioritization of all those different recommendations. So there's a lot of different individual projects our office is working on, but that's kind of the one from a higher level where we're trying to get super organized on how we proceed as a community in regards to all the great recommendations that have been made.
Great, thank you. And I will put into the, I have a chat now. I don't know if I can. So the two, I think, plans that might be of most interest to people who have called in here is the master plan, the new town master plan done by the planning board, as well as the water master plan. So I will see if I can figure out a way to chat those two links to everybody. But they're both on the town website. The water department website houses the water master plan, and the planning board website hosts the master plan, the townwide master plan. And then let's see. So then I want to just wrap up with Sam Woods from the North and South Rivers Watershed Association.
Hey, thank you, Becky. So, I think all of you are aware that the role of the Watershed Association is to be the steward of the river and the watershed that helps to feed your water supply, but also is feeding the surface waters of the North River through the tributary that's the First Herring Brook, which supplies a portion of the town of Scituate's water. And we've been working with the town for many decades now to restore flows in the First Herring Brook to support aquatic wildlife like river herring. And we feel that a healthy river is really indicative of a healthy water supply. And so if we know that we have enough water to support wildlife. We know we have a buffer between that and the needs of the people. And one of the things I think is important to emphasize is the need to continue to conserve and to change the way we use water culturally and societally. The efforts that are being undertaken, heroic efforts being undertaken by the town of Scituate's water supply department to build in redundancy and improve the capacity of their water supply is not too, it is, as you can see, expensive and complicated engineering. And all of that is to meet drinking water quality standards at the tap. So to take that raw water and to improve it to the degree that you can ingest it safely. And so it really makes no sense then to take that water. It's not efficient to take it and put it and use it outdoors inefficiently. And in fact, your permits from the state really do not factor in using water for outdoor watering. So one of the things that we did with the town this year was we built a video called Take the Pledge to Not Water Your Lawn. And I'm going to just share that with you all. And if you haven't seen it yet, this is your opportunity. Well, let me just make sure that I can do this correctly. Give me just a second. Sorry. There's the screen. Hold that, stop share. I have to be able to make sure that you can hear it. Okay. So hopefully you've seen this on Facebook or someplace else, but if not, here's your chance to see some of your friends and neighbors asking you to take the pledge.
Water. Water is a vital part of our town. So this year, we're asking you to take the pledge.
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 By taking the pledge, you agree to use water for people, not lawns, because we need water for so many important things here in Scituate.
We need water for fire suppression.
We need water for families.
We need water for pets.
We need water to drink.
We need water for food.
We need water for nature.
So take the pledge today. You'll receive a free lawn sign and social media badge. And remember, water for people, not lawns.
Okay, so if you go to our website, you can take the pledge at watersmartsouthshore.org. Oops, let me just make sure I'm shutting off the YouTube in the background here. Sorry. So we'd encourage people to take the pledge to really think about what's essential use of water and how we use it, because droughts are always things that we see in our rearview mirror. They're not things we see coming. Obviously, we didn't see the rain coming this year. We're glad for it. I think it's wonderful, but there will be another drought, and we all need to kind of learn how to live with these extremes that we're seeing. So we want to decrease the pressure on our water supplies by using water wisely. So I hope you'll consider taking the pledge with your neighbors and friends.
Excellent. Thank you, Sam. Thank you for showing that video too. I love it. So well done. And then before we move on to Q&A, I just want to show just a couple of those resources that I just mentioned. So people can see where to find a plan. So you've got on the planning and development page, you see the master plan 2020 update, if you want to read that. And then if you go to the water division page and scroll down, you'll see water system master plan. That's the other one I referred to. And then there's also a site, it's situatema.gov/water. So this is a page that the Water Resources Commission keeps up to date pretty regularly. I'll include links to those two master plans. We have some videos that we did as part of a Save Water Scituate campaign that we'll be sharing soon. Updates on the water ban, FAQs, all sorts of things are on this page. So go ahead and check that regularly if you're looking for updates on the system, or as I said, water bans, or what might be new and happening in terms of with water in the town. So great, thank you all. That was a great, I think, background and solid amount of information to update us this year, which is much different than our update last year. But also not, we still have these infrastructure concerns. We still have extreme weather that we're dealing with and trying to understand and live with. And we still have this different life that we're leading with COVID. It's a different summer than it was last year, but it's certainly not what it was 2 years ago. So I'm going to open it up for questions. Raise your hand, please. I will then give you the ability to unmute, but you'll need to unmute yourself. And we will go from there. So if you've got any questions, go ahead and raise your hand. And I will scroll through. Oh, here we go. One. How do I get there? Bear with me. Here we go. Pat Devine. I'm going to ask you to unmute, and then you can unmute yourself. Go ahead. Did I do that right?
Okay. Oops, can you see me? First off, let me thank you. You guys did a great job presenting things. I tried to take notes. It's a lot to take in. So just first off, a very positive affirmation. I'm very appreciative of everything that's being done in terms of infrastructure and also in terms of communication. I think you guys are doing a great job. So thank you for that. I will note that, and maybe, I don't know if this would fit in with Kyle's summary at some point to try and make it easy and accessible to the vast majority of us. Sean, when you were giving how many more gallons each of those improvements, 17A, 18B, and eventually Dolan, I couldn't take all those numbers in. Even if you repeated them to me now, I'd be hard pressed to figure out how they kind of compare with what our resources are now. But maybe when you're putting together something, Kyle, you can present it in a way that we can go, oh, this is what we used to have. And wow, this is what we're now going to have. If you could do that, I think that would be really helpful. So that's just kind of suggestions. And then this might be a little off topic, but we are talking water. So allow me, as one of the citizens here in Scituate, I don't even remember if it's a year ago, a year plus, that we received that letter that there were some PCPs, there were chemicals found in the water, these forever chemicals. And I'm not aware of any update as to where we are on that. Is there anything any one of you could share with us to tell us where we're at with that, and maybe how that fits in with these new wells and the filtrations that are being set in place? Thank you.
Yep,
Okay.
I could speak to that. I believe what you're referring to is the PFAS or PFOA chemicals, or the forever chemicals. We have done now 2 rounds of testing, and we have to do 4 quarters of testing. We've done 2 quarters so far. And all of our sites have been below 10 parts per trillion. And the MCL by DEP has been set at 20 parts per trillion. So we're low enough to be able to, if we all 4 quarters are below 10, we'll just go on to an annual sampling cycle. Yep, it's good.
Great, thank you. And then Pat, just quickly, and we can certainly kind of, we can work with Kyle to include the kind of the numbers of the new sources and how they compare to the old, but just to give you a sense, so 17A and 18B are the 2 new sources that should be coming online this year. And that's going to be an additional 550,000 gallons of water per day. And just to give you a sense of perspective, last week, the water treatment plant pumped 700,000 gallons of water per day. The wells pumped 100,000 gallons of water per day. So it's really going to bolster those sources pretty similarly. There's also wells are permitted to pump X, and in reality, we'll pump Y. So even if we don't get exactly 550,000 gallons per day from these two, once they're online, it will be a significant amount more than we currently have. But yeah, we'll work to put that into a more tangible, understandable, whether it's matrix or graph or whatever that may be. I muted myself, that doesn't help. Kim Dunn, I'm going to allow you to unmute yourself. Go
Hi,
ahead.
everyone. Thank you for your presentation. It really kind of streamlines and makes it a little more understandable what's going on in our town that we love. And a couple questions that I had are, I haven't heard any update about the reservoir. I live directly on the reservoir. In regards to the property that I own and what the town thought there was an easement there. However, there's not. So I haven't heard any update from anyone. I've called, I've emailed, and I haven't heard anything. I was wondering if there was an update on that.
Is this part of the Reservoir Project?
Yep, Tom Cook more recently was here, and it is private registered property. So I was wondering if there was a resolution of why people are crossing my property. I know Sean Anderson has come over from time to time and we've had discussion about this.
Okay, and I know there was a meeting yesterday kind of to talk about the next steps and kind of what's happening with the Reservoir Project. Sean, is there any light you can shed here for Kim?
We did have a visioning meeting for the new surface water treatment plant. Part of that, we invited Tom Cook just to see time-wise if the two projects were going to line up or not. It doesn't seem like they are at this time. He is in the process of answering a lot of questions that the state had on his application. So when we asked him for a time frame, he said 2 to 3 years before we'd be ready to proceed. Obviously, there's a lot of work to be done in that during a 2 to 3 year time period. And as far as the easement goes, she is correct. We do not have a registered easement. So we are still trying to work those details out.
And Kim, you can also, if you want to email me or the Water Resources Commission too, if you have questions or anything, it's wrc@scituatema.gov if you need another line of contact, and we can do our best to get the information you need. Okay, I'm going to move on to Paul Berkowitz. Go ahead, Paul.
Hey, Becky. Thanks for the presentation. So I'm a member of the Scituate Economic Development Commission. I just want to let everyone know that a couple of the initiatives that the Economic Development Commission will be pursuing will be continue to pursue sewerage for North Scituate Village. And, you know, that's long overdue. There's a lot of good work going on within the town to assess the ability to sewer that area in the existing treatment plant. And that involves this infill and infiltration project, replacing pipes that leak or that actually seawater goes into the pipes, and our plant ends up treating the ocean. That's not ideal. So that's an important project. And so anything that reduces the demand or capacity load at the sewer treatment plant helps us meet that goal. And of course, you know, not only the economic development impact, but the environmental benefit of, you know, to our waterways, Cohasset Harbor, of sewering that area is, you know, very important and a high priority. And one of the aspects of the new water treatment plant will be to reduce discharges to our sewer plant. Again, that will increase the capacity. And so another priority of the Economic Development Commission will be to get more information on the new water treatment plant, and then work with the select board and Becky, you and the Water Resources Commission to help inform the public about that plant and what it will do, and why it should be supported by the community. So thanks for the report, and water and sewer are top priorities. Got to get them done.
Thank you for that update, Paul. Okay, Holly Clark, go ahead and unmute yourself.
It does look like Holly unmuted, but we cannot hear her. Holly, if you're there.
Yeah.
I'm going to assume Holly's having some audio issues.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say, oh,
Can hear me?
yes.
Okay, all right. I've got a very touchy plug, I think. So it's been very helpful, and getting this information has been terrific. What I've noticed is the breakneck development, residential development speed. And I live not too far from the Toll Brothers development, and noticed that they have an automatic grass watering, lawn watering system that goes on all the time. And when I called the water department, because I saw the water flowing down the street when we had a ban last summer, I was told that it's well water, so they're exempt from this sort of thing. And I'm hoping that one of the scientists, is that you, Sarah, can comment on well water and aquifers. We all are on the same aquifer. I'm not a scientist, but I understand some of the basics. So having one entity allowed to pump out, like, first of all, drill a new well in the town, and then take out that water without being without following the rules that the rest of the community follows with regard to water conservation, is a question and a super irritation for me. So I'll just mute myself now. Thank you.
Sarah, you want to
I
take
think
this?
that was, yeah, so since that was addressed to me, I mean, yes, I mean, when you are pulling water from a well, you're pulling water from the groundwater. You know, we often say that it's, you know, multiple straws going into the same glass of water. Sometimes in some cases, the depths of the wells will be different. So you're sort of getting different sort of ages of water as far as when that rain once fell. But yeah, it does overall deplete the aquifer in the area. If anyone else wants to add anything about.
I guess I could just say, you know, groundwater is actually pretty complicated. Groundwater rights and the law around it is also complicated. And so in a very simplistic form, yes, we're taking water out. When we take water out of the ground, you know, it can be all connected. It can be from separate watersheds. So it may not necessarily be draining water from the watershed that feeds the drinking water supply. But that doesn't mean that it's not having impacts elsewhere. I think also important to realize is that it doesn't send the right message necessarily. And there is an equity issue around that. And so I think there's two different things. One's the science and one's the sort of legal framework and the social inequity that can bring. Our role has been to try to educate as many people as possible about the value of water for people and for wildlife, and to use water more wisely than frankly using it to grow a monoculture of grass. Grass is a very water consumptive plant, to stay green, to have a certain aesthetic. And there are many more most beautiful landscapes that people can have that don't require quite the same amount of intensity of maintenance. That being said, not everybody agrees with us. So we're going to continue to try to continue educating our youth and adults about that, and hope that people will get the message. So that's sort of my take on it, that the groundwater well issue is a difficult one to get your arms around. And at least from our perspective, the biggest impact to the surface waters and the nature of our surface waters is from the public use of the public well and the reservoir itself. And then we would really like to see people stop using it indiscriminately. So that's my 2 cents for you.
Great, thank you. Francis Kilduff, I see that you have your hand raised. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, I had a question regarding multiple unit housing buildings that are being built around the town, and how water conservation is going to be controlled, whether the individual units will have their own meters and will get their own quarterly water-based charge, as I do, or will the entire building be billed on the same rate as the average homeowner is?
So I can start that answer and maybe have Sean finish it. So as of last October, I believe we no longer were allowing master meters for multiple unit housing. So each unit will have its own meter that will be read and billed quarterly. The hope is that we will, we're working towards, I shouldn't say the hope, but the town is working towards replacing all of our meters with smart meters, which will allow us to be billed monthly. And that would include multiple unit housing and single family homes, so that we can have a little bit more control over our water use and really understand how to conserve better, as opposed to seeing something that happened 3 months ago. And that's it in terms of requirements for multiple unit housing. There are no other conservation requirements for multi-unit housing. The Water Resources Commission is working on a water offset or water banking program that was presented to the select board earlier this year that we're just trying to nail down the final details, which will have some of the newer developments assist with some of those projects like smart meters and other conservation projects throughout the watershed. Sean, anything else to add there?
No, I think you hit it all. Maybe just that, any new construction that people are seeing, you can rest assured that all of those are abiding by the, even if they just pay one service connection fee, they have to individually meter all the units, and they all will receive a bill.
Great. Okay, now Holly, Clark, do you have another question, or is that just your hand raised from before? I'll unmute you, you can let us know.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. It was just a follow-up with regard to my, and thank you very much, ladies, for your awesome science and legal education here. But is the town going to make any changes in the way it plans development and allows folks to develop, further develop residential properties specifically with regard to some of that sort of use of resources that don't sync with what the town as a whole is trying to do with regard to, you know, stewardship and, you know, maintaining safe drinking water. Or will just a rich developer come in and bulldoze over, you know, the process? I don't mean to be crabbing at you all. I think you guys do a great job. Okay.
So I will do my best to answer part of that. Kyle Boyd would have been helpful here too, but maybe Bob Vogel can weigh in a little bit on this. You know, there have been, the Water Resources Commission has presented both to the Board of Health and the Select Board this past year about including private wells in the outdoor water use ban. And as Sam mentioned, you know, it's complicated. The rights around the water are complicated. The underground mapping and watershed mapping is complicated. So we have kind of put it on our list of things to do to really better understand the science of how the water works under our ground, so that we can really provide some data to support the assertion that private wells should also follow this outdoor water use ban. We do, as part of the new water conservation bylaw that was passed this spring, we are requiring registration of private wells so that we can have a better understanding of where they are, how deep they are, and then therefore to have some much better mapping to either support or not support that assertion. Bob, do you have anything you want to add in terms? Oh, Karen does. I'm going to unmute you guys. Great. Thanks for chiming in.
I'd like to first say that Toll Brothers has 3 privately permitted wells, permitted through the Board of Health. They are not allowed to use any type of town water in any type of irrigation. And that is the same condition that's put in all new residential development. They cannot use town water to water outside watering. And that's, you know, the planning board is trying to help in that process, you know, to support the environment as well. When developments come in, sometimes we have no choice but to approve them if they meet all the conditions.
And I just chime in a little bit. The other thing that the Scituate Water Resources Commission and the Water Conservation Plan contemplates and has put forward to the Board of Water Commissioners, which is your town select board, is this idea of an offset policy, so that any new development that comes in would be required to find a gallon for every gallon that they would like to withdraw. And that in that way, it would be a net zero increase in demand on your system. That being said, you know, you have a permit that says you can withdraw 1.8 million gallons per day on average. You can do that safely. You have an average of 1.5 million gallons per day that has been in the past. And I think because you are not reaching the limit of your permits, legally you cannot deny a developer access to, or any individual access to develop their property based on water. But I do think that you can think about how you could maintain a net zero demand increase with a new policy. And these kinds of policies have been put in place. They're called water banking policies. They've been put in place in Weymouth and Hingham and in other communities. So our hope is to be able to push that forward as a policy in the town, so that you don't find yourselves increasing the demand. And I'll just say, because we've studied this for so many years now, the demand in the winter, you're fine. It's the summer that's the problem. And it's the use of water, you know, in the summer, that increasing demand that puts you guys into a concerning issue. And so again, DEP does not permit water permits based on the use of water in the summertime. They don't consider that. They say an individual per capita usage is 65 gallons per person per day. And you fall well within that with a 17,000 residential population and the amount that you've already been permitted. So anyways, I do think, though, that the idea of a one-to-one policy is something that the Water Resources Commission has put forward, and that we would love to see the town adopt. And I think it would help to address and be able to put money and resources into conservation, which is essentially new water for the system.
And I think it's important to note too that the Water Management Act withdrawals, permitted withdrawals, do not include private wells. It's only the public water, to both to Karen's point as well. Holly, does that, at least help answer? Was that a hand raised I just saw? Bob, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Just in terms of residential development, we certainly have a lot of it and are looking at continuing that trend. The area around Greenbush and in the future, the area around North Scituate Village are going to be zoned, have been zoned to facilitate a more dense development. We have 40Bs, of course, as you all know, that can come into town and develop areas and within parameters that otherwise might not be possible, but because they are 40Bs, they can do it. We're looking at the ones that we know of in the pipeline, well over 500 new residential units, probably coming online within the next 3 to 5 years. Some of them already coming online. That doesn't include Toll Brothers, which is considered pretty much a done deal and all built. So there's something to be considered there, certainly, as well as the restrictions and metering and low flow fixtures, of course, which everyone's mandated to use. But there's an intensity of development that I think has been factored in, but needs to be continued to be considered in these discussions.
That's good perspective. Thank you. Let me just see if there's anyone. No. Okay, so we've got Paul Berkowitz that's got another hand up. Just go ahead and unmute yourself. There we go. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Becky.
Sure.
We haven't talked about this, but a real important initiative of the town is replacing old water pipelines. I think, and Sean can speak to us better than I could, and you could probably, Becky, but I think there's about 120 miles of pipeline, and we're about a third of the way into replacing all that pipeline. And that, so the leaky pipeline, apart from water quality issues or water appearance issues, but there's significant losses in those pipes, and it's called unaccounted for water, and that's a big part of our demand. And so the most cost-effective way to increase our water supplies is probably replacing those pipes, and the town has a program to replace all of those pipes. Part of the problem is, you're digging up streets and causing detours and traffic and construction impacts, and so the town can only do a few miles a year, with those kind of considerations. But that's a real important initiative, and it'll really adds significantly to our water supply reliability. Just a word on the private wells. I agree with certainly Karen. The town people aren't just putting in private wells, without some review and approval by the town. There are regulations. The town's created buffer zones around the town municipal wells, so that those private wells, if they're located within the permit requirements, have a minimal or no impact. And I agree with Sam and Sarah as well that I think this is kind of more of an optics issue than the real impact on water supplies. There are, in terms of municipal supplies at least, they have they don't use, there aren't many of them. They don't use much water. And to me, it's almost a distraction from trying to get some of these big issues like the water treatment plant, the pipe replacement, the sewer plant. That's really what will move the needle on these issues. Thanks.
I'll just chime in again and say that I think if you have that one-to-one policy, some of the resources could be used for some of the things that Paul was just mentioning, so that you can focus your efforts on conservation and tightening up the system so that we're not pumping water for it only to leak out into the ground. So it can really help, I hope, offset. And as again, you guys are at 1.5 million gallons per day on average, but it's that seasonality problem that you have. And it's not because you have an influx of population, it's because people are using water outside.
Thank you, Sam and Paul. Okay, I've got Jim Glinsky. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, I came in a little bit late, probably half an hour or so, but just a couple of things I've been hearing that I'm a little bit concerned about when I was researching my book on the water supply. Current estimates, tie and bond study and the master plan water master plan that has been developed or is still being developed. The population figures where the population of town was actually probably going to go down over the next 10 or 20 years, maybe even below 18,000. The 2020 census has Scituate over 19,000 people now. Not 17, I think, Sam, you mentioned that, but I always use the figure 18, but apparently now it's over 19. So those estimates of population growth seem not to be very accurate. And obviously that has a big impact on water usage. So I don't know if there's any reaction by the town to that, and with all the development going on, which has been discussed, it seems that figure is only going to go up, not down. So that's one concern I have. And the current water usage seems to be at times over 2 million gallons per day, except when it rains. Unfortunately, this summer we've had a lot of rain, but it's still usually over 1.5. It's usually 1.6 or more. So I think people need to look at some more recent figures and trends when you're thinking about future demand on the water supply. Secondly, and I've said this several times before, one of my other concerns is enforcement. I'm a walker. I walk all over town, different spots, and there's just so many violations of the water policy. And I know the water department is shorthanded and doing their best. No, just yesterday, just taking a brief 3-mile walk, I saw some guy out at 12 o'clock watering his lawn with his hose. At least he was using a hose, but it's in the middle of the day. And somebody's washing their car in the driveway. A couple of weeks ago, I got in an argument with somebody who had washing 3 cars in their driveway. And I said, there's some water restrictions here. And he told me to shut my mouth. And he was bigger than me, so I kept walking on. But and I think some of it's just plain ignorance. I mean, people are doing this so out in the open. I can't imagine that they don't that they know what the policy is, and they're just outright ignoring it. And I don't know how the town can do a better job. I know there's stuff on the website all the time, but I don't know how many people in town look at the website. So I don't know if there's a way to stick something in their water bills that reminds them of the policy, or just some other different method, because I don't think the message is getting across exactly what the water policy is. And some of these people are 50 feet or 50 yards away from the sign that's has the water restrictions right on it. So enforcement seems to be an issue. And I think, again, some of it's just out of sheer ignorance, not because people want to violate the policy. So that's my 2 cents.
That's great. Thank you, Jim. I'm going to start at the end and then maybe see if Karen Joseph or Bob Vogel want to talk about the population projections. But, as part of the new water conservation bylaw that was passed this spring, enforcement is a big issue. Absolutely. So we increased the fines to hopefully make the fines have a bit more of an impact than they did in the past. But also kind of looked at, one of the things with registering the private wells as well is, that people need to have a sign that say they have a well, so that if you are allowed to water, in theory, you are not beholden to the water ban. Someone walking by like yourself or driving by or someone from the town would see that they're, they don't need to be following the water ban, and they can focus on true violations that they were finding. We also tried to simplify the water ban with these new tiers. The information is the same, it's just organizing them in terms of tiers. Having these info sessions, really trying to get the word out in a bunch of different ways with this scituatema.gov/water website. So, certainly open to suggestions or ideas or additional ways to educate residents. You can reach me at wrc@scituatema.gov. We've done a lot of great outreach this summer with Facebook posts and the Save Water Scituate campaign, but we can always be doing more and always be doing more to educate residents about the water ban. So again, send any of those ideas to me. I'm going to see either Karen or Bob. I had similar questions about the population projections in both the master plan and the water master plan. But I do know that even though we are seeing a lot more development, population, what's the right word? Not population projections, but there's 2 pieces of population projections. It's how much new development there is, as well as how many people are leaving town. And so it seemed that there was some projections that there were more people kind of leaving town or leaving their homes in Scituate than there were new people coming to town. So I don't know if Karen or Bob has anything else they want to add. Go ahead, Karen. Oh, I have to ask you to unmute. Hold on, sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, I know that the master plan does have some information on projected populations. When we were asked for what projects were in the pipeline or we thought might be in the pipeline, we've provided that information so it was included in the master plan. We provided information to the water resources about what projects might come in. I just wish to say too that any project the planning board gets is all routed to the water department. And if it's in the water resource protection district, it's routed to them for comments so that we can get their comments right up front while the public hearings are going on for development. But the master plan does have population information, and I believe there will be some increase in population.
A couple of things recently have occurred that may help this in sort of a micro way, at least. We have new software that's going in place in the building department and eventually townwide that links building permit applications now to the water and sewer departments and also to planning, to Karen, so that every time we get an applicable application for a new home or an increase in area of an existing building that might also increase population or water or sewer usage, it's flagged right up front to the appropriate departments. That has not happened in the past, and so going forward, that may actually make a difference, at least in the availability of information and the availability of data that you can use for planning. I'd also say, interestingly, that the SBAB, the Massachusetts agency that tracks school population trends, has forecast that the school population, the children in town, is going to decline significantly over the next period. So while we may be seeing more housing units, we may be seeing actually fewer people as families become smaller, as these units are inhabited by either younger couples, and many of the new developments feature 1 and 2 bedroom apartments designed to be first homes or first habitations for younger couples, commuters near the train stations, that kind of thing. So more units does not necessarily mean a huge increase in population. It's something that just has to be kind of observed over time, but that would be my guess.
And Bob, did you say that was the SCAS, the organization that makes those?
The MSBA, the Mass School Building Association.
Got it.
Or authority, excuse me.
Okay. Great. Good background. Okay, so I'm going to end on this last question we've got. We're just after 1 o'clock. So Jane Polito, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hey, thank you. Thank you everyone for this meeting, this information. I just had a question. I was looking for a little clarification about wells, and what I'm hearing is that they aren't affected by the laws that we have in terms of conservation, but fundamentally they are impacting our town and everyone else. So why is it that they're exempt from these restrictions and bans? And is there any action towards potentially like having restrictions and bans for them? Yeah, thank you.
Well, I'll try there. So let's see. So as you said, there are regulations for private wells, but they're not related to conservation. And while I think there was when this was presented, this idea was presented to other town boards, there was a desire to have some more data behind the number of wells, how much water they use, and the interconnection of that water with our groundwater. We don't have a true map showing all of that information. And I think there was some hesitation to change that status without the data to support it. So, Paul mentioned earlier that there aren't that many and they don't use that much water, but we really don't know how much water they use because they're not metered. So we're trying to do some work to really understand private well water usage better so that we can provide the data that has been requested in order to make the final determination of whether or not private wells in town should be exempt, or maybe certain wells in certain areas should be, or whatever it may be. Does anybody else want to add to that? So yeah, Jane, I would say, keep a look at the Water Resources Commission agendas, the Board of Health agendas, the Select Board agendas to see any of this starts to, come up and is something you might want to be involved in and follow as it makes its way through the boards and committees.
I guess I'll just say that, there is a DEP bylaw for putting restrictions on private wells that you could download and look at, and you could, advocate for it, Jane. I think that it can be complicated, but it can also be it needs to be perhaps advocated for by the people who are concerned with that particular issue. So it's a democracy.
So on that, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you to our kind of panelists for all the information. Thank you for everyone who participated, asking great questions. Hopefully you can share some of the information you learned with your networks and your communities, and we can, start to get the word out. And I would say keep an eye out for more sessions like this, especially with the water treatment plant planning. I think there will be some more of these to pay attention to. And again, if you have any ideas for how to better educate other residents who are other participants in our community in terms of these issues, please don't hesitate to send an email and let me know. But I hope you all enjoyed the rest of your day, and thank you again for tuning in today.
Thank you.